Britain is now effectively in a very lawless place. Peter Hitchens there talking about the shoplifting epidemic that's going on, people that he knows personally telling him stories of what they've seen out and about whenever they've gone to a supermarket or whether they've gone to any sort of shop. You generally see some form of illegal activity going on, some form of shoplifting. But what they're now saying, the Labour Party, is that the Tories are now literally not solving 90% of crimes, which is a dreadful figure, isn't it? Let's talk to Mike Neville, former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector. Mike, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. It's terrible, aren't these current figures?
They really aren't good, are they? I mean, it seems to go from bad to worse. You know, one minute we're saying that, you know, only 6% of burglaries are solved. We're now saying that all of these crimes are not being solved at all, largely because there's a shortage of detectives, apparently.
Well, there's all manner of reasons for this, and I think the first is a lack of focus. Senior officers have been promoted for years for promoting diversity, wokery, or certainly not crime. I remember when Cressida Dick took over at the Yard, the focus on solving crime just went. There was no ambition about the targets or anything like that. Secondly, they're recruiting the wrong type of officers, lots of ex-students and things like that, rather than people from the armed forces. Thirdly, they've lost loads of experience, and as you say, there's hardly any detectives. But I think the biggest thing is the focus on crime. I mean, I did the Freedom of Information Act request that found out that 70% of the Met hadn't arrested anybody in 1 year. And I'm not here to moan, Mike. I actually emailed Mark Rowley today to say I offer my services.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's other detectives like me who would like to help as well.
And what do you think the chances of you being hired to do anything will be, though?
I think that I've offered my services to go in there and help with the images. The police are particularly bad at technology. They haven't got the systems around. Most people have Ring doorbells and things like that. So how can they only be solving 5% of burglaries? It's a nonsense.
Well, it really is, but it's worse than that because an awful lot of crimes, according to Labour, are being dropped without a suspect even being identified. I think 2.3 million crimes dropped, up almost 500,000 on 2021. A chronic shortage of trained detectives, 7,000 vacancies, fewer than half of police forces having a scheme to directly recruit detectives. I mean, I was listening to somebody talking about this over the weekend, and the new sort of policy of trying to get people from university, graduates, that kind of thing. And I was hearing that there should be more training on the job, a bit like the NHS, a bit like being a nurse. You know, you learn how to be a nurse by being on a hospital ward, not by sitting in a classroom.
That's the trouble, and it's the culture of it as well. So at university is not like Hendon, which was like a military establishment where you learn to be smart and deal with crime. And also it's very hard, I think, to become a detective straight away because you've got to learn about how to deal with a shoplifter before you can deal with an armed robber. You've got to deal with how to interview people, the trade craft, not just the law, but how to be an officer, how to speak to people, how to get information out of them. And we've gone down this road of thinking that everything can be taught in a university, and it cannot. And that experience takes a long, long time to get. So that's why I think that senior officers should be looking at, I know we're dinosaurs, me and other people like me, but you know what? We can solve a lot of crime, and we can get in there and help out. I've offered myself, I think, if they handle things like CCTV and images, ring doorbell stuff, better, they could double the detection rate for burglary. And I offer my services to any police force that wants to do that. But the government have got to crack down on these chief constables and commissioners and make sure they're actually focusing this and not dancing the Macarena for the weekend.
Well, exactly right. I mean, I was having a conversation more broadly about the world of politics this morning with Tim Montgomery and saying that, you know, there doesn't seem to be the will to do anything. I mean, we've got Sir Mark Rowley who's come in and said that he's going to lift up a load of stones and it's not going to be nice what he finds underneath them, and he's going to change the policies of the police at Scotland Yard. He's going to change the way they operate. But, I mean, it doesn't seem to be changing. You know, we still seem to have the same problems that we had last year.
Yeah, absolutely. The Met is an enormous ship. It's 5 or 6 times bigger than any other police force. It's got all those extra national squads like the anti-terrorist squad and stuff that really could be handled possibly by another agency. And it's going to take some time, but what he needs to do is some quick wins. And there are some quick wins around solving more thefts and burglaries and robberies. I mean, one of the scandals I thought, Mike, I looked into rapes. Now, we know that 90 or more percent of rapes are parties known to each other. So it's very difficult because there's no DNA evidence. It's simply one word against another. But I looked at stranger rapes where, you know, a woman's attacked by someone she's never met. So you think that DNA would be available, CCTV. And the police are only solving 6% of stranger rapes. I honestly thought it would be 60, 70, 80%, like the murder rate.
Right.
So it just shows how things... it's just awful. But there are quick wins to be had. And they need to utilise technology better and just be smart about what they've got. But they're just blundering around at the moment. They're focusing on all the wrong things. And now, of course, the good thing I can see is it's gone political. Because Labour and the Liberal Democrats are forever targeting the Tories now and saying, you are no longer the party of law and order. Just like you, Les, the Tories have captured on that this might be some way of getting some votes back. So hopefully now the public will be made safer because the politicians think they might lose the seats.
But the problem is, isn't it, that they go for these targets. I seem to remember years ago when they decided that it was taking too long for people to answer the 999 calls, so they put a kind of a holding caller in the middle of it all, so that when you dialed 999, it got answered very quickly, but you didn't still necessarily get to a police officer for another 5 or 6 minutes. But then they could say, oh yeah, but we've fixed that, you know, because now when you ring 999, somebody picks up the phone. Yeah, but nothing actually happens, and I think that's part of the problem as well.
Yeah, there was the targets are a good thing. Like when they were first introduced by Michael Howard, it was X amount of burglaries, X amount of robberies being solved. Now, of course, there's more and more targets, and ringing 999 is not the ultimate thing. The police catching the criminal is what they should be measured on, not how they achieve that aim. They managed to skateboard out there and get hold of the criminal, and that's just as good.
Right.
But they really need to focus just on simple things like how many robbers have been charged, how many rapists, and these are what they should be doing. And I've said this time and time again on this programme, the Home Secretary could say, right, all these diversity targets that you've got, we're stopping them. There's no need to focus on that anymore. All we want is good officers of any colour, any sex, any sexuality. Forget about that. You chief constables and commissioners, focus on catching criminals and putting them away and making the streets safer. That is what the public want. They don't want wokery anymore.
No, exactly right. And the problem is that people who weren't perhaps thinking of committing crimes, albeit petty crimes like shoplifting and just nicking things from people, breaking into cars and all that, you know, they're now thinking, well, nobody's ever going to catch me, so I can just do it.
It's absolutely right, because if you know that you've got a 1 in 20 chance of being caught for thieving, then you'll thieve, because you know even if you do get caught, then you'll get no punishment whatsoever, and the court will give you like a few £100 fine, and you'll be on your way if it's that much. And what you find is that all this evidence, like thieving and burglary, is all captured on CCTV. So why isn't it being used? Why aren't we using that to make the public safer? And the reason is the police just haven't kept up with technology at all. They're still burning discs and things like this, and it's ridiculous. And as a result of this, people are not safe in their homes and they're not safe on the streets.
Yeah, but if there are 7,000 detective vacancies, I mean, it's going to take a long time to fill those jobs, isn't it?
Yeah, it's shaming, Mike, because when I joined as a young policeman in '89, my aim was to become a CID officer. Now people don't want to work in the CID because you lose your rest day, because you've got to go to court, you've got to do investigations. Too many officers prefer to be in uniform, where you do 5 days on, have 10 days off, and every day is an island. And it will take a lot of time. And that's why I'm suggesting they should really be looking at bringing back experienced officers of every rank who can then pass on this tradecraft to these young detectives, so we can get back to a position where Scotland Yard was the envy of the world and not the laughing stock.
Yeah, absolutely right. Mike, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.